I'm going to call the meeting of the Playground Working Group of the Darien Parks and Recreation Commission special meeting agenda for 8:45 Thursday, October 6, 2022. The first item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes. Do we have the minutes, Pam, from that last meeting?
Oh, did I not attach them? I guess not. So let's do that at the next meeting.
Okay.
Sorry.
We'll move it to next.
I did write them up, but I guess I must have forgot to attach them.
I know you wrote info about what was discussed. Is that what you were talking about, or did you have something separate?
I did actual minutes.
Okay, let's do that for next time. So we'll go to the next item, which is discuss and choose a final playground design by either Game Time, Creative Recreation, or Compan companies. Let's get some feedback from people, especially Curtis, who wasn't at our last meeting.
And we also do have 2 members of this working group that are going to be showing up at 9. So that's 9 minutes from now, just to give a heads up. So maybe Curtis can talk about his email that he sent this morning. Do you want to start there, Susan?
Yes, I would like that because I'd like that feedback on record. Thank you.
You're on mute.
That's the best practice because there's so much echoing that goes on when we're not speaking. But thank you. Again, I'm happy to participate and just offer the view of somebody who's a part of that accessible community. When I saw all the designs and I saw what sounds like the creative rec design, which sounds like the one that's preferred by a number of individuals in this group, my immediate reaction was they're just checking a box. So there's a ramp it's basically a hallway. And there's really no play opportunity there whatsoever. And if you spent any time on these playgrounds with those big play sets, kids are running back and forth like crazy. The chair's an obstacle. Little kids in wheelchairs are usually pushed by a grown-up. That doesn't sound practical on a kid's piece of playground equipment. And there's only one way in and one way out, right? So you got to turn around. And frankly, if it's the less common case of a child in a wheelchair, the ramp's a little bit of a risk, right? We're not talking about a grown-up with full control. So I didn't like anything about it, frankly, about the accessible part. I love all these playgrounds, right? They're super fun, creative, imaginative ways to play. My both daughters always loved the playground. Charlotte was always on the swing, and Claire would just run around. So, but the reason I like the Compan option was there's just so much variety. And we talked in one of our previous meetings about the music feature, how that's always a welcome and great for a lot of different kids. And there's as the company confirmed, there's lots of options for kids at different ages in their design. The swings are key. Most of them have swings, but I just really like the variety. And then as I wrote in my email, the ground level merry-go-round is invisibly accessible. And accessibility should not be the driver of all this. It really shouldn't. It isn't in my mind. But I grew up with one of those merry-go-rounds. The movement is amazing. If you're not familiar with PT or OT factors, just look up vestibular input, and it's fantastic with that kind of motion. And again, as I mentioned, it's invisibly accessible because a child can roll on or be rolled on and really participate in the fun. Whereas with the other one, it's just, okay, here's a ramp. Now what? I just sit and watch just like I do in the classroom and all the other environments where it's not really inclusion. So that's my feedback. But again, the primary reason for me was the variety of play options in the one that I preferred. And it just so happened that it was a huge plus on the accessibility side. Hope that's helpful.
Thank you very much, Curtis. That's very helpful, actually. Pam, could you actually pull up the Compan playground so we could look at it more closely together as a group? You're on mute.
Yes, bear with me. I had all three of them there and it seemed to disappear, so bear with me. My biggest fear with this virtual thing is that I'm going to hit a button and the whole thing is going to go down. I'm going to end the session. All right, so let's see. I got to grab. See, now I don't see it. So I'm going to have to minimize this.
I think you just had.
No, I had, that was creative.
Okay.
Hold on a second. Okay. I'm going to share. See how I do here.
Thank you, Pam. And we all have this printed out as well in case it's hard for you to share, but we appreciate you trying.
Curtis, while she's trying to do that, I have it in front of
There
me.
we go.
Oh, there you go. So my question is, how do you feel about having one structure versus two, and the surfacing? Those are the two things, you probably know that the surfacing is like kind of like a turf versus
Yeah.
the play and play. So I just wanted to get your feedback on that.
Yeah, and I recall listening to the explanation about the turf, that they've made major improvements in recent decades with those materials. It's visually appealing, can look like grass. We've seen it in other playgrounds, so I don't have any issue with that as well, and it avoids some of the issues, the cost of replacement issues of some of the other materials. But for me, when I just look at this design, number one, the jungle gym, or whatever you want to call it itself, is pretty cool. Again, I always see kids on the monkey bars, the slides, hiding. The swings, I think, are always we lived in New York City for a long time. The swings were always the number one attraction. And then I like these little islands of fun, different things for kids to do. So groups of little kids don't have to feel intimidated by the bigger kids. They can go off and do their different things. And again, like I said, the merry-go-round is so cool. So that's why they're largely good options. Hard to really go wrong, but this is my favorite.
Susan,
Yeah,
can
so
you hear me?
can I just add something? So Curtis, the one reason I didn't like this one is it doesn't have anything for 2 to 5 year olds. So I understand what you're saying.
Yeah,
I'm sorry?
I'm seeing, Kathy, that quite differently. I mean, I'm seeing plenty for kids to climb on.
Yeah.
I'm seeing those 2 islands, great for kids. The music options, great for little kids, and swings. So I don't really see it that way at all.
And there's also a
It didn't have a
playhouse.
special for climbing. Yeah. I hear what you say. There's also a playhouse, so it's a little bit different. No, I'm just asking the question because I want to make sure we get all the facts out there and make a decision that way. So I hear what you're saying about the ramp and the other things. I guess my question is, there something specific? Is it just that you don't think from an accessibility standpoint that a wheelchair could go up a ramp on a larger play set? They're just not built that way because you can't turn the chair around? Is that what you're saying to us? And that there really isn't a structure?
I can pull that one
So
up.
it'd be great to understand that.
Yeah, so I think I gave a lot of detail in my email, Kathy.
I read the email. It just would be helpful to have it on the record.
Okay.
So
So number one, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, when I first saw it, I thought immediately, it's just a ramp. It's nothing more. It's not a play opportunity for a child in a wheelchair. As I mentioned, these playgrounds are mostly for kids under 12. And in my experience, most kids under 12 who have physical disabilities are aided or pushed by an adult. So that's not really a great option for these things, as you've seen all the kids running around them. And then when you get there, what do you get? You just have basically a ramp and you stop. There's no play option for the child, so they just sit there. And again, they're facing one direction. They have to turn around to leave. If it is a child in a wheelchair, the ramp is a little bit risky actually, because they don't have wheelchair control like grown-ups do. And I just don't see it as a play opportunity. Whereas I think the swings obviously are. and and I think the merry-go-round is fantastic. I would love, the biggest issue with the merry-go-rounds when we grew up is the space underneath. Kids always got hurt, and this takes that primary issue away. And also, it's so easy. Like I say, it's invisibly accessible. It's so easy to just wheel somebody on, and that spinning motion is so wonderful for the vestibular system, for all of us. Frankly, we could use more of it. But I just see it as an all-around win. And thank you for pulling up this whole design here. Yeah, this is kind of a cool habit trail, kind of a playhouse. But if the big kids are around, you don't really have a place to retreat to except for the swings, which is why I like, because the little kids do feel intimidated by the big kids often and pushed around. And I do like the other option that has these other little islands they can go to, including the music and the chair, and do their own thing. So I think it's just really, the compound option is just really thoughtful. And someone mentioned the color option, but color doesn't seem to be a major issue that can be changed. But that's, I think I'm not saying the other options are bad. I'm just saying the compound option is my favorite, and representing the accessible community, I would say it's the best one.
And Curtis, can I just make mention of this particular design? When the wheelchair goes up, there are play panels. I just want to mention that. It does look like there's some panels there that they can put, like they show one on the ground too. So just wanted to mention that as well. But I see what you're saying about the turnaround, which is something I wouldn't have thought of the one way in, one way out.
Yeah, and again, don't forget the fact that most kids are pushed by a grown-up.
Right.
And that there's no place for that on a playground or in this play set.
Mm-hmm. And also, the group should keep in mind that when you made mention of the turf, they can do poured rubber too. I mean, that's just something that it was a different option. And we thought it'd be less expensive, but quite honestly, it's just as expensive.
Thank you for confirming that separate option.
Do you have other pictures of the compound equipment? I only see the one.
That's the only one that was sent, I believe. I think they have. Let me bring this down.
Can you bring it back up again?
Yep.
And Curtis, thank you so much for your comments. They're really helpful to all of us, and I appreciate you putting them on the record. We also have Sarah and Chris here. Maybe they would want to give their feedback as well.
Ladies, I know you guys just jumped on, but Curtis actually sent a really thoughtful, he actually talked about his feedback that he sent on email before you arrived. But if you had a chance to read it, I think it's worth looking at it real quick while you're waiting for others to speak. But we would like your feedback at this time too.
I actually had a chance. I'm in the car, so I don't know if you guys can hear me, but I did read Curtis's email, and I actually agreed with what he had to say about the ramp going up and down. I also didn't think so. I know that was one of the big reasons we were picking that was for that. So I thought, Curtis, you brought up a really great point. That I wasn't really thinking when we were thinking the ramp.
The other thing I like about the compound was that it gave the circular spinny chairs that we talked about that are not terribly expensive, but kids of all ages, little kids, middle kids, have all seemed to really like those little spinning units. Curtis said you can really, compound has things out in a way, as Curtis said, that big kids can go to one area, but little kids can go to different areas if they care to, get away.
And I'm gonna put in game times. Let's just put theirs up here so that we can see them. It's one shot. Let me see if I can get the other one. which is a little bit better because you can see the swings. Oh, and they have a spinner here as well, but again, not ADA.
I did
Is
like
everyone
the,
still on?
yes, I did like that spinner. But if the push comes to shove between two spinners, I love the way that Curtis is saying the invisible accessibility, and that it's flat to the ground versus what we had grown up with. I keep
Curtis,
looking. Last thing I was going to say was every time I've looked at the game time thing, the main core set, I keep thinking about the main core set and reflecting to Baker for some reason. You know, as some of the other moms have said, they would like to have more climbing stuff there. That I almost feel like that particular smaller unit, I know this was designed for McGuan, but the unit to the right might be something we might want to explore at Baker with different options. Just throwing that out there for the future.
Sarah, do you have any feedback? Because we haven't heard from you. I know you did send a note in to the group, I believe. But if you want to highlight anything, now that we've kind of come to other, we have some other input with the ADA, I think we really appreciate that.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't see emails this morning, so I'm just quickly reading Curtis's. Yeah, I definitely, I think I said to Tam, I really like Compan. I don't know why it just didn't wow me. And I think part of that was, oh, sorry, is there a lot of feedback? I'm sorry.
Sarah, what didn't wow you? Which one? No, which one didn't wow you?
Compan, am I saying that right? The actual structure. I love all the other elements. That they have. The merry-go-round, the spinny thing. I mean, all of that I think is fantastic. Maybe it is for me, the shade, there's a little bit of shade. I don't know. It definitely feels like there's not that much for the kids under 5. Like that to me would be really scary for my kid under 5 if they attempted to go on that play structure, like that crossing part. And I think someone said that they only had one picture of Compan. They actually, I don't know if you guys noticed in the email, there's a link and there's actually a bunch of renderings in the link. Did everyone see that or no? There's like 5 or 6 pictures.
And the other thing, Sarah, we talked about it last meeting was that narrow balancing part on the climber. You're right. I was saying that it was not really a safe climbing device for the under 5.
Yeah.
It's very wobbly.
Yeah, I mean but again, I know the biggest thing we've been trying to figure out is how do we make this for, all different ages, or what's age is the most important. I mean, I don't know. I was definitely kind of torn between the two. I just got maybe a little more excited with creative recreations. I don't know. I think they're both great. But yeah, if we're going to take all this space for the ramp, and Curtis's points are obviously very valid, and I hadn't thought about those, then, are we losing a lot of space unnecessarily? But then could we not have them come back to us with a different design that doesn't have the ramp? I don't know. If we're saying that the ramp isn't necessary, is that not an option?
I do want to add something to that, Sarah. Yes, good point. Yeah. The other thing is when you look at the playground by the Sound at Weed Beach, they did use 2 companies. They used Compan for the water element, and they used Landscape. I'm forgetting their name right now, but it's Emmy O'Brien for the other one. So that is a possibility of reworking this ramp and actually maybe putting the spinner in that we like, the handicap accessible spinner. So that is an option that we could explore.
Yeah.
And
I know.
Another option, and this is really a question for you, Sarah, is what else would you like at Compan for the littler kids? Because as a house, they were in Spinners, but what else would they need? A climbing structure?
Yeah, they don't have a climbing structure,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
I mean,
It also goes back to the fact that the little kid. The little kids are going to follow the big kids and they're going to want to go on that structure, and there's nothing keeping them from that. They're going to climb on up, and whereas this
Gonna
other
go.
one that we talked about has, if they're not big enough, they're not going to be able to get to that top.
let me go back.
Can I make one more point? Curtis, I apologize for not jumping on for the whole time. I'm just dealing with something right now. My family. What would make that? What would make that playground a little bit easier to use from a ramp perspective? Like what would they have to? How could we make that one more accessible? Because I think that's what we're trying to achieve. We can make.
Yeah, I just don't think those kinds of, we keep talking about climbing. Climbing is obviously not something that kids in wheelchairs do, right? So if we're building structures around climbing, that structure itself will not, let's not try to make it wheelchair accessible. It's a gimmick. It's a check in a box.
Mhm.
And if there are other wheelchair accessible things, again, that is not my priority for a playground. But if you can get it for free, then it's a huge plus, which is why, I thought that particular unit, and frankly, all the little islands, the music island, right? Obviously the merry-go-round, any kind of ground level things. And again, one can't assume just because kids can't walk that they can, despite that, use their arms. My daughter has gross motor issues. She couldn't even spin a wheel if she tried, but someone can push her on accessible equipment and a swing, and she has the time of her life. So you just want to think of the broadest community possible. And I think that design with the ramp wasn't really considering the reality of this cohort, this under 12 cohort of disabled kids. It was just threw in a ramp. So that's just the way I saw it immediately, and the way I would think about the design. But again, I am not looking at playgrounds with an accessibility only lens. It's nice when you can add it. It's important to add it to avoid exclusion. But every piece of equipment doesn't need to be accessible. I hope that's helpful.
I just wanted to go over, we recently had our park meeting as a commission. We actually specifically went to McGuan because we felt it was so important to look at it and think about it, especially as this playground suggestion is going to come to the commission shortly at our next meeting. And one of the things we kind of emphasized was that this is our only accessible playground in Darien, like the one where we're putting our effort into it and making sure that it has to be accessible. So honestly, just getting this feedback from Curtis has been very illuminating for me as a commissioner, because I feel like if this is kind of the place where we're accessible for our town residents that need it, we should go with that priority in mind. And I understand that there are going to be kids that might not have the typicals, that might not have the right amount of challenges. But I think as a commission, we want to make sure this is usable by them, and that they'll have many opportunities to play on this. And with that in mind, I think that Compound comes as a clear winner. I did Playground by the Sound, and we did use two different companies, but there was a lot of logistical issues with doing that. And I feel like, each company then has to deal with fall zones and equipment, and it ends up being very challenging with a time frame crunch that we're kind of hitting. I'm not saying we should rush it through and not think about other options, but I also want to caution everybody into knowing that it's not as easy as, just picking this and that, because then they have to coordinate subs. It's a lot of work that is involved with vendors. So that's something to keep in mind. But anyway, I wanted to give you guys that feedback right away. Go ahead, Pam.
Yeah, I just also wanted to add, and you're correct, Susan, the commission, it's very important to the commission to make sure that the playgrounds are accessible for all. But I also think it's very important to note publicly that we have the opportunity with these ARPA funds to make all of our playgrounds accessible for all. So I think moving forward, we're always going to keep that in mind, in my opinion anyway. And also, I do think if we believe that Compan we're leaning toward that, but we also can look, and Sarah's looking at it and it's not really wowed by it. We can talk to the manufacturers and try to get something a little bit more challenging for the other kids too. So we can, these aren't like fine, all that, this is it. We can make some changes.
I mean,
So,
outside of that challenging thing, what changes would people like to see on this? That's, I guess that's the next question. Is, so it's the challenging options for the 2 to 5 that I'm hearing. Is that what the parents are saying?
I think the Compan, sorry, this is Alyssa. I apologize. I've been not chiming in because I was driving back from preschool. But the Compan one, it has all of those nice elements that are around, but the main structure just doesn't, like, I'm just envisioning my kids going up. The monkey bars, they're the ones that do have a monkey bars, which I really like, but it doesn't seem like there's much else going on with the structure. Some of the other ones, like the creative one, that one I liked because of the fact that the main structure had so many different things that the kids could be doing on that one structure. But the Compan one just seems a little more basic. I don't know if anyone else agrees.
I agree with Alyssa. It just almost feels like it's going to get real crowded real quick. There's just not a lot of place for a lot of kids to just maneuver. You're either going down a slide, you're climbing up something, but sorry, I'm looking at one of the smaller pictures. It just feels tight. I don't know. And maybe that's why I like what the creative one showed, is that it felt like, there's the 2 levels. I don't know. It felt like you could fit a lot more kids on it.
With more options for things that they could all be doing while on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I do like the style of the Compan. I like that kind of Scandinavian, that kind of cool, the look of it is very nice. And having things spread out with all of those, especially for, hearing Curtis's input, really, it was so good to hear because there were things that I hadn't thought of, so it makes so much sense. So having all of those things at ground level for the kids, I think is definitely a wonderful idea. But then if we could just keep the other kids in mind, and just if Compan can come back and just give us, if there are just some things they can add to the structure, or if the platforms can be larger so that I don't know, I just like Sarah said, it's just kind of tight.
Was Compan the one that came back pretty high from the first one and then she had to take things away because of her budget?
Yeah.
It might also be pretty tight because they have all these other little islands around too, so they're taking up less square footage, right? Because if you compare it to the creative one, which really spans a good percentage of the surface area.
I also think that that playground attracts the young guys. I talked about this last meeting. A lot of little guys go there after their preschool, and you watch the kids at Cherry Lawn, and a lot of them are on the climbing structures, and they're not on the things that are flat on the grounds. Like they kind of like to climb and get up there. So I think if we keep in mind that population, in the climbing structure being not the safest thing for them, if we go with the Compan one, like I just keep thinking about the 3 to 5 year or the 2 to 5-year-old crew that's going to be wanting to use this playground, and there really isn't a climbing structure for them, because I don't think they're going to stop when they see that balance beam. They're going to try to cross it. And that's what's alarming to me, that that's not the safest climbing structure for kids. That it's not like a separate playground where there's a fence between it. They're just climbing halfway up, and then all of a sudden it doesn't become the safest option for them.
Just to confirm, you're talking about creative as all one structure makes it difficult to keep the little ones off of trying to climb at the highest level. Is that what you're saying, Ruth?
Sorry, no, the Compan one, the one that we're talking about with that little balance beam structure, the fact that there is a lot of stuff for the kids to do on the ground level, but I just feel like they're going to want to climb it. And there's a lot of little guys who go to that playground, and I just don't know if we're giving them enough. Because my first go-to was thinking about my older child and thinking the Compan one had the best climbing structures. I loved it. If you remember our meeting last time, that was my go-to until I stopped and really thought about the safety of the little guys. For a parent to be able to sit there on the bench and let their child play safely without hovering over them, like that causes anxiety. Like, I don't like to go to playgrounds where I have to constantly be watching my children by holding their hands. I like to know, like, oh, they're on a safe place. And I'm afraid that other one, that one big climbing structure, isn't the safest for the little guys.
That's what I just said. That's what I was confirming what you said. It was the big one, creative, is where you were afraid that they would be able to follow the older kids and it was too big. But
No.
your concern is that there's not enough then little climbing on the compound for 2 to 5.
Maybe I'm not saying, I wasn't talking about the creative at all. I was just talking about that one climbing structure in Copan, the one with the balance beam on it. That one, to me,
That's too difficult? Are you saying
that
that's
would too difficult for the 3 to 5-year-olds. Yes, that balance beam structure, I feel like the kids would fall right through it.
Thank you.
I think that's also I think it's a 5 to 7 structure, if I'm correct. I mean, 5 to 12.
Yeah, it's 5 to 12. You're right.
I wonder if Compan could come back and offer a different option, because that is the only way for them to get to the slide, is to balance on that little bar. So I wonder if they have different options of ways to get to that, where they could maybe add in another bar on the side, something else.
They can reach the little slide. There's 2 slides. They can still reach the little one.
The little, yeah.
But again, there's still only that one platform. Everyone has to get to that one platform, and either you're going down the little baby slide or you're trying to cross that. It looks like a tightrope is what it looks like, right? That one, Ruth, right? And then you can get to the other the bigger slide and the bar that kind of like twists to get down, which again is also no way a little kid could get down there.
No. And Ruth is right. The little ones are going to try.
They're absolutely going to try.
And the parents are going to be sitting there, at the bottom having to watch every second.
Yeah, I agree, especially if the parents are also trying to watch a baseball game at the same time. So it's going to be hard for them.
Okay, so should we, Pam, just to kind of move forward a little bit here, should we ask, Summer to come back to us with a different structure? I guess with that in mind, if that doesn't really work for the playground,
Sure.
or are we saying we should entirely do the split? I guess that's.
I think personally, in fairness, I think both of them should have the opportunity. It sounds like we narrowed it down to creative recreation and Compan. And I think if they both come back with all our feedback in mind and have one more design.
I agree, Pam.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I'm
Sounds
happy
like
to. Let's do
It won't
that.
take them long.
So then the question is, okay, that's fine. We need to schedule something again. Like, let's work on this calendar now. because
Yeah,
I
we
think
could do a
we
special
kinda know
meeting.
what everybody's looking for, everybody wants. But let's figure out another time. Do you think it's a week or a 2-week turnaround for this?
I think the basics are there. So I'd say 2 weeks personally, and 2 weeks
Okay, so if
actually.
we do 2 weeks, we're,
Can I
are we
make a
gonna?
Sorry.
Can I make a suggestion? Sarah, Ruth, Alyssa, can you send us Curtis? But definitely the three, I mean, Curtis, you've been so valuable, thank you. But the three ladies that I just talked about, in order to help Pam go back to them, can you please send photos of exactly what your kids' favorite things are? So we're not kind of dancing around in a circle. So we can say to them, this was the specific, right? We felt compound, we loved all of these elements, but that, the parent can't, doesn't, they need to be comfortable with the kids climbing in this one section, even if they're younger. And so we need something separate for the younger section. And here's an example from Mead, and here's an example from Greenwich or Fairfield or whatever. If each one of Sarah and Ruth and Alyssa could provide that feedback to Pam and maybe Susan, and I don't know, CC us or something, I think that would be helpful. I think a visual might be helpful. I don't want the manufacturers to be frustrated that we're going to come back to them 5 more times and tweak this, tweak that. What are your thoughts, Pam?
They will not be frustrated because they want the job. They want the job. So they're going to be very happy that they're still in the running, and then they have the opportunity to change the ramp, keep accessibility in mind. Compan's going to have to come back with something a little bit more robust, with maybe some different levels, and see if she can, come back with something that's going to grab you a little bit more, but keeping the space for accessibility, which is what Curtis really loves, and also the merry-go-round at the ground level.
How would you like to see different, Curtis, on the creative? Taking out the ramps, it seems like everybody likes the high structure there. It's nice elements on the lower structure that shows the child in the wheelchair on musical elements. There's the lower structure, but just separated up into 2 separate sections. How would you do it?
Yeah, I think, and there's a ton of feedback. Somebody is giving a lot of feedback, but I think if it was decided that it's not necessary that you have, are you hearing me? Looks like I'm frozen.
I can hear you.
We can hear you.
Sorry, my screen froze for a second. Every element of a playground does not need to be accessible. And certainly, all the climbing that seems to be really important is not something these kids are going to be able to do. So let's just set that aside, right? You don't have to give kids in wheelchairs access to those elevated elements. The swings are huge, and anything, the key is inclusion and movement, right? And different options. So yeah, ground level options are great, but I don't have a lot of experience with that because I don't have a child that can do that herself. But the movement is key. So if everybody really prefers the creative climbing elements, then just take that ramp off. It might save enough space to put in another, like the ideal would be, I think cost is probably going to be an issue though. You can't get everything, without giving something up, right? With the creative, you get a huge play set, but you sacrifice other areas. If you want to keep that huge play set, it's hard to imagine that you'd be able to add some of those other things that make the compan option preferable.
And I do think that we will receive more open area that gets rid of the ramp. And he also already, I didn't forward it to you guys because I asked him if we could put in one of those rocking bowls, and he would throw that in for nothing. So in that plan, so he was able to fit one in there. So I think he'd be able to do some other, and we can ask if there's any, maybe Creative does sell something that is a spinner to the ground level. So, but I think we give them both opportunities to come back.
That would be great. I specifically ask if something that's flat to the ground and thin, like Compound has. That would be really key if Creative could offer that as well. Thank you.
So in lieu of time here, our commission meeting is on the October 19th. So if I can get them to come back, and I'm going to try to see if I can get them to come back for the 13th, which is 1 week. They'd have 1 week to put something together. And if we could meet next Thursday, same time, if that works for everybody. It's going to be a special meeting anyway. If 9 o'clock is better, tell me. We can start at 9. Curtis, are you available? Oh, you're.
Yeah, I'm just checking in now.
I think we already had a meeting scheduled, that our regular meeting, wasn't that already scheduled that day?
It is.
Yes, I am available.
Also, Pam, do you have the original the original model that Copan came to us with? She had a lot of things in her presentation. Do we have access to that? I can't find it in my email.
I'll look
We
for
could say
it.
like, oh, I remember seeing something.
I don't think she sent it to us. I think she was showing it to us in her presentation. And then when we told her the price was way too high, at least that's how I remember it. I think then she sent us the drawings that Pam sent to us. I think that was just her presentation.
And she may be able to save some money. I think the turf is more expensive, so she might be able to save 10K from going poured rubber. So that's another thing. So I hear everybody. I totally understand where everybody's coming from. So I will have a meaningful conversation with both of them. And you're correct, our regular scheduled meeting is on the 13th of October. So I'm sure that they'll have it ready. They have no choice, right? Give us another final design.
Is 9 o'clock better than 8:45 for Sarah, Alyssa, Ruth, Curtis?
I mean, I
Yeah,
have
that
to
was-
drop off my daughter at 9 at the preschool. So unfortunately, I can, if we do 8:45, I just always have to join late just because I'm doing a 9 a.m. drop off. But don't work around just me.
Can people do 9:15? I mean, or is 9 better? I just don't want to push into the workday for some people, but at the same time, I feel like the next meeting is going to be pretty important because I feel like hopefully we'll be able to narrow it down and come to a consensus for a decision. So if people can do 9 or 9:15, it'll be easier to get everybody involved.
Both of those times worked for me that day.
I also have not drop off at 9, so I could be on the phone, but I wouldn't be able to be on screen until at least 9:15.
Yeah, same with me.
Let's do 9:15 only because today, like, we started at 8:45 and there were only a few of us on, and I know everybody has other stuff and it's not as productive, even if we think it's the times there. So why don't we go 9:15 for on October 13th, and hopefully Pam will give us, get those designs as soon as possible to look at so that we know what we want to come back with. Because we're going to need that time to discuss it at the meeting that day. So anyway, thank you very much for all your help. This has really been so illuminating. This is why we have this committee, to get your viewpoints and people that are our end users. I mean, it's whether it's ADA or accessibility or our youngest residents. This is what we need to hear, and it's taken time, but I think it's going to be a great playground once we're done. So thank you very much, everybody. Really appreciate
And just
it.
one last note is that it will be a special meeting since we're changing the time. Doesn't mean a whole lot, but it just means we have to stick to exactly what the agenda says.
Is it
Okay.
the same link every time, Pam?
No, I set them separately with GoToMeetings.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll look
Very
for that.
good meeting, you guys. I feel like we got to the heart of the matter of what we needed to do. Now we've drilled down from 3 to 2, and now we're giving these guys the opportunity to come back and give us, to tweak it based on what end users have given us their feedback. So great job, Susan, Pam, and everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Agreed.
Have a great
Thanks,
day.
everybody.
See you guys
Thank you.
next
Bye.
Bye. Have a great day.